Hey guys, Jane here, and today I want to talk to you about From Cradle to Grave.
Pictures and patterns put into words that stream across the page, capturing life as soul spoken.
And this is a historic mystery, and it is the third in the series I've read, and I believe it's called the Will Reese Mystery Series. The I did videos, and I'll link them below, about book 1 and book 2. And I enjoyed the series up to this point, and this was my favorite book so far. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 stars. And one thing I will say about the series, if you choose to read it, I really feel like they have to be read in order. And for me, I was really glad I liked this book because book 1 and book 2 I had like a small issue with. It's kind of spoilery, and it's kind of complicated of why I thought it was an issue, but just based on a YouTube video where a person gave their opinion about a particular trope that was used, I felt that the trope used in book 1 and book 2 was a little problematic. This book did not have that issue. It has other things, but nothing that I thought was problematic, which was good. So I was really having a good time. For anybody who doesn't know, this is kind of one of those weird situations where I didn't intend to read the series. It's just kind of happened. I had one of the later books off of Goodreads and started to try to read it and was like, oh, there's so much character stuff happening. Clearly, I can't just jump into this mystery series anywhere. So I went ahead and started at the beginning. And that actually reminds me a lot of, and this is very similar to, in some ways, the Gaslight Mystery series by Victoria Thompson. And Victoria Thompson's Gaslight Mystery series is probably my favorite mystery series of all time. So, like, this is a very positive comparison. I would say I like that one still better than this one, but it does a lot of the same things. Like, you can't just jump in willy-nilly because there is so much character development and so much character arc that you almost have to read the mystery in order. Whereas a lot of other mysteries, you can kind of pop in and out, and it's not a huge deal. There's not a huge amount of character stuff that happens, and you can just find the mystery that's appealing to you, read it, and go on. But that is not the case with these, and it's not the case with the Gaslight Mystery series either. So very heavy character work. It is set post-Revolutionary War, and there is still some stuff from the war that is brought up and talked about. There is also a lot of discussion about relevant things in the time period, and often things that are still relevant today. And again, in the Gaslight Mystery series, they do that, and I love it. I love the discussion of, things like poverty, things like religion, things like people's opinions and how we view things. And in the case of this book, the welfare systems, what was set up for people in the early America. Also, the way that men and women are viewed differently when it comes to children, like illegitimate children, and just the way women are treated. So it's a really cool book. So anyway, we have this setup of Reese and his wife are Lydia. They have they've just gotten home recently to his house. He's a traveling weaver, and his son is running the farm. And they get a message from Mouse, who is a friend from a previous book. And she is a member of the Shaker community, which Lydia was at one point part of, but she hasn't been since this book, but she has like strong ties to the community. And she says, listen, I'm in trouble. Can you come help me? So they go, and she has kidnapped some children who are being neglected or poorly taken care of, and tried to bring them to the Shakers so that they could be properly taken care of. And she is now in trouble with the Shaker community as well as the community where the children were taken from, because she'd gone to their police system, or it's not how our justice system is set up. But she'd gone to the authorities and been like, listen, this mom is not taking care of her kids the way she needs to. Can you intervene? And the town fathers, who was like in charge of things, they kept deciding that she was taking care of the kids enough that they couldn't remove the children. It wasn't the right choice. So there's a lot of stuff happening, and then a murder happens. And then they're like investigating this murder and trying to figure out what happened. So I'm gonna get into some spoilers now because they're relevant to like what I loved about the book. And so if you haven't read the book and think you'd like to, maybe go ahead and don't read this part. I'm not going to go through the actual like reveal at the end because I'll be honest with you, I read this book like a week ago, and who done it was not important enough to me to like register and tell you who it was or even what their relationship to the case was. So the mystery itself was kind of just fine. It was just fine. Like I knew why it happened, but it was just fine. So with that being said, though, I do want to tell you the character stuff that I loved in this mystery. But it is kind of spoilery. So our first victim is the neglectful mother of these children. And so the husband and wife detective team have to go in and foster raise these children. And I knew from like having had a later book that they end up adopting all these kids and raising them, and it's awesome. And so I was all for that. I was all for the parenting happening, and it almost stepped into like not romance territory because they're already married and they already have a good relationship, but like when you're reading a romance and they're taking care of the kids together and that kind of vibe, like that's what I was getting for it, and I was here for it because I love that in my romance. Like I want all the parenting and the pregnancy stuff and like give me all that. So them taking care of these kids together was awesome. And our main character, Reese, him being like, I didn't have the opportunity to raise my son the way I wanted to because of all my being gone for work. And maybe with these kids, I could have another chance. And, or at the time, he's like, when Lydia and I have kids, we're going to do better because I feel like I missed out on so much. And aren't these kids cute? And it was so good. I loved all of that. I loved that there was a whole lot of discussion about this mother who had been not taking care of her kids as well as she could have been, but like Reese is really, really compassionate to her, and we see a different side of her than like what everybody else is seeing. Like Mouse and even Lydia initially just see somebody who is not doing their best for these kids. They're lucky enough to have these kids, and Mouse can't have kids. Well, Mouse has a palate. I don't remember what it's called. Like she has problems with her mouth. Like she has a deformity, and so she is living with the Shakers, and they have a celibacy rule, and she is not in a position to marry and have children. So she is very like wants children, wants to be a caretaker of children, and this woman is not taking care of her children, and it is really upsetting to Mouse. And Lydia had lost a child and is really affected also by these children being neglected. But Reese is much more open and being like, this woman was in a really hard situation. She's got these kids, and none of the dads are being useful in any way. And we find out who the fathers for some of them are, and that they are people who, in some cases, knew and were not stepping in and taking care of their kids. And how, though, everybody just looked at her as the problem. Like, she was just a seductress. She was just a whore. But, the guys involved, they were just upstanding citizens who happened to sleep with the wrong woman. Like, no. And why aren't you handling your business and taking care of your kids and helping this girl out? And then every time she tries to do things, people like assume she stole stuff. She has this money that she's trying to keep for her son. And at one point, like she tried to use it to pay off a debt, and people were like, oh, clearly you stole it because you wouldn't have this much money. And it was like $50, silver dollar. I don't even know. But it was more than they thought she should have. And so clearly she was a thief, and she does have an alcohol problem. But I think too, like at some point, you just, you would feel so let down and tragic, and she just had a lot of really terrible things happen to her. She herself was illegitimate, but was adopted, sort of. So she is her aunt's illegitimate child and is claimed by her aunt's husband, but like her aunt and the husband were like, oh, this is my sister's kid. So we adopted my sister's kid. My sister had this kid in another town, and that's important because in their welfare system, if you aren't born in this town, you can't be like, go back to where you were born. They're the ones that have to take care of your welfare. So even if you've lived in that town for 20 years and you've contributed and you had like a thriving business, if you are no longer able to work, that's too bad. Go back to the town you came from, which is horrible. Like, I can see the issue of, maybe you don't want to be the place where a ton of new people come and congregate who are poor and struggling. But for real, like, if people have given you the best years of their lives, you shouldn't have to be like, oh, where'd your parents live? Where are you from? No. So anyway, she was illegitimate, and she had a really bright future initially, but then she got pregnant. I don't think she was a young adult. I don't think she was a teenager. And it was one of the guys in town. But he got another girl pregnant too, because he couldn't keep it in his freaking pants. And the other girl had like better prospects. So he married the other girl. And then, this girl, she's like, okay, well, I'm in trouble. So she married another guy, and they went off to a different town. Well, then her husband died, so she's a widow. She's a widow with a baby, and she comes back to this town to take care of her mother who is dying. And then, she has her kids there, she's raising her kids, and then she's having these issues, and some of the issues are caused by other people in the town. But, like, I'm not saying she didn't make any mistakes, because she probably could have made better choices all around, but everybody in this community is just down on her. And she's trying, she's doing her best, and nobody will help her. And even like the fathers of her kids who are in the town, because a couple of the men in the town have fathered her children, and they ain't stepping up and being like, oh, I should really handle that. No. So I felt really frustrated with the men in this book in general. And I think we're supposed to. It is a woman writer, so she is very good at like casting the light on this is what's going on. And even though our point of view character is a male, he is very sympathetic to her plight and to the things happening with her, and to the fact that a lot of this was not her fault. So she's killed, and then later her uncle is killed, and everybody originally thought that he killed her because he wanted her land, but it wasn't that. And I don't actually remember why her uncle was killed. I think he knew who had killed her, or a secret about her, like her parentage maybe, because her dad was also in the town and hadn't claimed her, but like she knew her dad was. Anyway, it was a whole hot mess of a story, but like in a good way. And like I said, I don't remember who did it or how exactly they were related to the rest of the story. It made sense, but I was more focused on the characters and things like that. And it was a really good time. I had a good time with this mystery, and I highly, highly recommend it if you like historical mysteries. And if you like the Gaslight Mystery series, this is a very similar series, though it's a different timeline. Like, obviously, the Revolutionary War, it's different characters, kind of a lot of focus too on the Shaker community and culture, which I love. I thought that was really interesting, but not maybe everybody's cup of tea if you do like the Gaslight Mystery series. But yeah, overall, solid read. I had a good time with it. All right, guys, have you read it? Have you read other books in the series? Have you read other historical mysteries that you think I would enjoy? And I like them very character heavy when possible. Like the two that I've read that I've really enjoyed have been very character heavy. I've read a couple others that I didn't enjoy as much. But anyway, drop me your suggestions for other historical mysteries. I'll see you guys next time, guys. This has been Jane. Bye.